Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Forests are like gardens. They need to be tended and managed. The gardeners in the forest are loggers and other forestry professionals. Making a living off the land is as tough as it is rewarding. But keep in mind, logging is a business. In order to make a living off the forest, you've got to be as good with a chainsaw as you are with a checkbook. In a few minutes, we'll tell you about an upcoming free workshop for loggers. But first, let's join Keith Silva, who was in the woods earlier this year to learn about the logging business from the ground up.
If a tree falls in the forest and John Parker is around, you can bet it makes a sound. Over the winter, Parker has been working with a landowner in Springfield to thin out pine, remove Norway maple, and cut about 50 cords of firewood.
No guts, no glory, right?
Parker runs Brookside Timber Harvesting. In fact, he is Brookside Timber Harvesting. To his fellow loggers, he's what's considered a small operator.
So what's a small operator?
I don't know, it's one guy and a chainsaw, skidder.
For 25 years, Parker has been working the woods. He logs, sugars, runs a portable sawmill, and he works with a forester to remove invasive species. He's been thinking about expanding his logging operation. He'd like to buy more equipment and hire someone to help him out. But Parker knows he has limitations.
Oh, I'm a good logger, but I'm not a good business when it comes to doing paperwork. I don't like paperwork, really didn't know where to start. I could have maybe fumbled through some stuff on the internet, but it doesn't take much for me to get sidetracked.
Parker has an accountant. What he needed was a business plan. To help him get his business on track, he contacted Chris Lindgren, a University of Vermont Extension forest business educator.
John's smart. The fact that John knew he wasn't good at the paperwork, he had someone helping him do that part, made it easier to sort of assess the financial position that he was in. And that was a small part of the business planning process, actually. You know, the way I work with most folks is I've got a bunch of exercises that we go through, one-page plans, goal setting, write up a history of business, and through small chunks, we basically put a business plan together.
Chris kind of made it easy. He worked with me and gave me little projects to complete, which worked well for me. Just little tasks, not just dump the whole thing on me, and kind of worked at my pace.
Working together, Lindgren and Parker set some goals.
One of the first things that I try to do with folks is to do some goal setting. And his first three goals, one was to write a business plan to get financing for a piece of equipment. The other was to get licensed in chemical application for invasive species. Another was to work on marketing and build out a website.
Business plans are living documents, and like life, they can change. The equipment Parker had his eye on was a feller buncher, a combination chainsaw and excavator for pulling and hauling logs. But when Parker's license to remove invasive species came through, he had to make a business decision.
Forestry is always a moving target, and when we started, the buncher looked like the way to go. And this other avenue opened up, so the buncher is kind of still in the works, but it's not as much a priority as it was when Chris and I first started.
Is that okay?
I think it's okay. I mean, you've got to work in the woods. It's just like farming or you got to make hay when the sun shines, and this seems to be working out and paying well. Not sure, the buncher would work. It's just this seems to be a good avenue for the short term. I think to be a small operator and to move forward, you're going to have to be diverse and be able to be flexible. And this just kind of wasn't where I planned to be, but it seems to work out. And I think the buncher and that type of operation is inevitably where I'm headed. But instead of being a month or a year, it may be a couple of years to get this avenue taken care of before we put the buncher into the plan.
One of the reasons I like to work using one-page plans or using exercises is it allows it to change. It allows you to continuously work on your plan. Oftentimes people do just write a business plan to get financing, and then that's it, they shelve it. Much better to continue working with your plan, updating your plan, changing your plan, facts on the ground change, and then you've got to change with them.
If it wasn't for Chris helping me out, I wouldn't do it. I would just keep muddling along like I had been and find money if I wanted something and jockey stuff around. And if it hadn't been for him helping me, no, I probably wouldn't even mess around with it.
There's a saying, love what you do, and you'll never work a day in your life. It's advice Parker lives by.
There's a lot of easier ways to make a living.
I think I know where this is going. Why do I do this? I guess I love it. You have to love to be a logger. I like being outdoors. I like setting my own destiny. I complain about it all the time and swear I'm never going to do it again, and then I go right back to it. It's nice dealing with customers. It's rewarding to see at the end of the day a big pile of wood. It's physical, challenging, dangerous work, but it's after a day or two you'll get used to it.
A good logger knows when to cut and what to keep. A good businessman knows when to ask for help to achieve what he's got in mind. Thanks to UVM Extension's Forest Business Program, John Parker is both. In Springfield, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
The Business Skills for Logging Professionals workshop is being offered in 2 locations. The program will be the same in each location. On November 7th, the workshop will be held in Rutland, and the November 8th workshop will be in Hardwick. The programming runs from 8 to 3:30. To register, email Christy Sherlock at the address on the screen or call 802-476-2003. The workshop is free, includes lunch, and is eligible for continuing education credits. Our next story is about a Vermonter who certainly logged a lot of time outside. Wilson Snowflake Bentley was a farmer, a self-taught scientist, and in 1885, the first person to photograph a single snow crystal, better known as a snowflake. Rebecca Gollin brings us the story of this one-of-a-kind Vermont legend.
Vermonters are known for being inventive, and one of the people who helped establish that reputation did a lot of his innovative work right here on Nashville Road in Jericho.
Oh my gosh, who was Wilson? He was a farmer, a dreamer, a self-taught photographer and scientist and weather expert and a musician and so many different people all rolled into one.
Sue Richardson is talking about her great-great-uncle, Wilson Bentley.
My grandmother, Amy Bentley Hunt, was one of Snowflake Bentley's 8 nieces and nephews. She grew up on the farm with him there in Jericho. She was actually his favorite by all accounts. And I grew up on her and my grandfather's farm here in Jericho, hearing the stories about Uncle Willie.
Bentley was fascinated by the natural world, and when he was 15, his mother, who had been a school teacher, gave him a microscope. This opened up a whole new world to Bentley. He looked at leaves, blades of grass, insects, and when winter came, snowflakes. That started a fascination that led to a lifetime of work, and the lifelong nickname, Snowflake.
Once he saw just the delicate beauty, it captured his attention. It just captivated him. He spent 2 years trying to draw the snowflakes, the designs that he saw, holding his breath so they wouldn't melt, and then got this idea somewhere from a magazine or something. He saw an article about this camera with a microscope attached and thought, if I had that, I could photograph the snowflakes, not just try to draw them, and preserve the beauty for all time. So after much discussion and persuasion, he convinced his parents, primarily his mother, to purchase this camera for him for his 17th birthday. And that was the beginning.
Bentley spent the next 2 years figuring out how to capture the image of a snow crystal through the microscope. The process involved a number of challenges that called for creative solutions, including rigging up a pulley system when he couldn't reach the front of the camera to focus.
He had to work in the cold because otherwise the snow crystals would melt so quickly. He worked in an unheated woodshed. He wore heavy mittens so that his warmth from his hands wouldn't warm the microscope slide and cause the snowflake to melt too quickly, and basically had to hold his breath when he was transferring the snowflake from the wooden tray to the microscope slide so that the vapor wouldn't melt the snowflake too quickly. And then it was a question of figuring out how to focus and how to process this correctly. So it was really a truly learning curve. He was a true pioneer in photomicrography.
Along with the intricate process he came up with for photographing the crystals, Bentley also kept very detailed records of the weather and conditions during each storm.
He was able to start figuring out science-wise what might be happening to snow crystals.
Mark Breen is a meteorologist at the Fairbanks Museum in St. Johnsbury. A number of the tools and language Bentley developed to describe what he saw are still used in the scientific community today. And many of his theories about why different storms produce different shaped flakes have been proven true.
And this is before we really thought about storms the way that we see them today. And so he's really looking at not what was happening in Chicago or Detroit or something like that. He was focused on what was happening in Nashville in his backyard. But he kept very careful records of the temperatures, like I said, wind direction. And over time, he started tying that with the types of crystals. So I can remember one of the notes that I saw where he had a collection of snow crystals and he called them local crystals. And he felt that they were produced in a cloud that was basically happening over that western range of the Green Mountains. And indeed, that turns out to be the case.
While photographing snowflakes was a passion for Bentley, he never made a living at it. He owned a farm in Jericho with his brother and fit his photography around his farm chores, taking thousands of images and also making copies of his slides for schools and institutions.
He never made any money. In fact, he spent more money than he ever made. He sold copies of his slides to schools, universities, to Tiffany's jewelers for jewelry design, and he charged 5 cents a plate, which covered his cost. He was still charging 5 cents a plate in 1931 when he passed. He never raised his price. He probably, we figured it out one time, he probably made about $7,500 over all those years, and he spent about $15,000. So it definitely wasn't a career, it was a passion.
Bentley photographed a wide variety of subjects in the natural world and chronicled his family, but his lifelong dedication to capturing snowflakes never faded. In the end, it's even what did him in.
He was coming back from Burlington, came up to Richmond on the train, and it had been a winter very much devoid of snow, warmer than normal. He hadn't photographed a single snowflake because there just hadn't been any snow. So this day, as he was coming back, it started to snow. His friends wanted him to stay in Richmond and not walk back to Nashville because of the storm, but he insisted on getting home because it was snowing. And he was ready to take some photographs because, as I said, he hadn't taken any that year. He caught a chill, a cold. It turned into pneumonia, and he passed away on the 23rd of December, 1931.
Today, visitors from all over come to the Jericho Historical Society to see their Snowflake Bentley exhibit. And copies of his prints are on display in museums from Shelburne to the Smithsonian.
He photographed snowflakes in Canada and upstate New York in different areas. They were never as good or as intricate as the ones he photographed right there at home in Jericho.
He left a legacy that reaches from the small town of Jericho, Vermont, around the globe. Snowflake Bentley showed the world how to take a closer look at the little things. In Jericho, I'm Rebecca Gollin with Across the Fence.
Thanks, Rebecca. And that's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.